It started with a software update. Just a small bubble in the corner of the screen on an old iPad we hadn't touched in months. My daughter needed something for online school, just something to browse with, take notes, join her Zoom classes. Her laptop was glitching again, and I remembered the old iPad sitting in my desk drawer, wrapped in the same microfiber cloth I always used to wipe down my watch. It was hers originally, my wife's. But after she got a newer model, this one just lived in a drawer with old receipts and USB drives no one used anymore. I never reset it. Never needed to. She hadn't used it in almost a year, or so I thought. I handed it to my daughter without a second thought, told her to plug it in overnight, update the software, see if it still worked. That was all it was supposed to be, a dead piece of tech getting one more round before we tossed it for good. But the next morning, before school even started, she left it charging on the kitchen counter while she went upstairs. I don't know what made me glance at it. It lit up, just briefly, something syncing, refreshing, rebuilding itself from whatever cloud it still clung to. It was automatic, silent. It didn't ask for a password. It didn't warn. Just pulled pieces of a life back together, piece by piece. And that's when I saw it. In the Photos app, buried not in the recents but under Shared, was a folder I didn't recognize. Not titled with dates, not tagged with vacations, not anything she'd normally label. Just a single word. Blue. That was the first thing that didn't make sense. She didn't name folders like that. She was obsessive with her categorization, every family trip tagged by year, every birthday separated into albums with stupid emojis. Blue wasn't hers. It wasn't me. I tapped it once. 10 photos loaded. The thumbnails were too small to see much at first, just shadows and skin, flashes of fabric, angles too close and too intimate. But one photo wasn't like the rest. It wasn't explicit. It wasn't even clear at first what it showed. Just a cropped section of a hotel bed, sunlight slanting across the blanket, and something beside it. A sock. A man's sock. And not just any kind. Patterned. Pale green diamonds on navy blue. My sock. But I'd never been in that room. I stared at the image longer than I should have. Not because I was confused, but because something in me needed to make sure. It was my sock. I remembered the pair. She bought them for me on our trip to Seattle 2 years ago, from some overpriced boutique we ducked into during a rainstorm. I'd worn them 3 times, tops. One was missing. I thought it was eaten by the washer. I thought nothing of it. But there it was. In a photo I didn't take, in a room I'd never seen, on a bed I'd never touched. My sock. Like some twisted joke. Like she was mocking me, using pieces of me to build a lie. I didn't say anything. I just set the iPad down quietly, like it might explode if I moved too fast. I stood there in the kitchen for a while, not moving. Not breathing, maybe. The refrigerator hummed. The faucet dripped. My coffee had gone cold. Everything else was the same. But the shape of the morning had changed. Not loudly. Not like betrayal usually feels in movies. There was no yelling. No slamming of doors. Just a cold, meticulous absence, like realizing a chair you sit in every day has one leg shorter than the others, and you never noticed until now. She came downstairs 10 minutes later, hair still damp, asking if the Wi-Fi was being weird. I nodded. Didn't look at her. I watched her walk past me to grab a banana, peel it with the same casual rhythm I'd seen 1,000 times. She didn't notice. She didn't know. I didn't let her. Because that was the moment it started. Not with a scream. Not with confrontation. But with a sock in the wrong place. With a folder named something it shouldn't be. With a version of my life quietly rebuilding itself through a device I forgot even existed. And somewhere upstairs, my daughter was about to sync her school notes onto a machine that didn't just hold educational apps, but a map, waiting patiently, of exactly how her mother had broken us. I didn't need to dig further. I didn't need to open the rest. That was the first crack. Clean. Silent. And deep. It's strange how something can feel like it's dying while still smiling back at you. That's what it became, our life. Clean kitchen, matching mugs in the cupboard, folded laundry stacked like promises on the dresser. Nothing screamed broken, but everything whispered it. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. Still asked how my meetings went. Still curled up next to me at night, sometimes. But the way it was gone from it, like a shadow without a body. She'd say, "Love you," with the same rhythm she used to ask if we were out of milk. No pause. No breath behind it. Just words. Like muscle memory refusing to admit something had changed. She started locking her phone a few weeks after the sock. Before that, she never bothered. I'd plug it in for her some nights while she dozed off on the couch. Now she kept it face down, took it into the bathroom with her, slept with it under her pillow like a child clutching a secret. When I asked about it once, lightly, casually, she blinked and said, "Oh, I've just been reading articles about mental boundaries. You know, growth, privacy, healthy detachment." She smiled when she said it. That new kind of smile. The one that closed her mouth but not her eyes. The one that left me colder than silence. She'd picked up new habits too. Not major ones. Subtle. Things she claimed were for self-care. She started doing yoga in the mornings again, but never at home. Always at a studio she never named, with a friend I never met. Some mornings she'd be back before the kids were up, still glowing from whatever peace she pretended to find there. Some mornings she'd walk in just as I was leaving, pretending not to notice the way I watched the clock. She smelled like new perfumes now. Not expensive ones. Boutique. Things with names like Salted Skin or Fig Ember. Things that made no impression except the impression of trying too hard to be effortless. I wanted to believe she was just changing. That this was just a new phase. That maybe I was the one drifting, the one failing to keep up with whatever reinvention she was chasing. But then she started forgetting things. Little things. My mother's birthday. The dinner reservations we made a month ago. The fact that our son was supposed to be picked up early from soccer. When I reminded her, she'd laugh softly and say, "I've just been so in my head lately. You know, working through things." But she never said what things. She just said things, like that was enough explanation. Like I should be proud of her for being so deeply complicated. Then came the night I nearly asked. The false climax. I was sitting on the back porch, late, nursing the kind of drink you pretend is for the taste. I'd left the sliding door cracked behind me. It was almost midnight. She thought I was asleep. I heard her voice. Not loud, soft, deliberate. Just a few phrases, one after another, like she was reciting lines. "No, it's fine. He has no idea. I'm careful. I promise." Yeah, me too." Silence. Then, soon. I didn't move. Didn't even breathe. I waited for the next words to shatter the air. A name. A plan. A confession. But they never came. Just the soft pat of her feet across the floor and the low hum of her toothbrush running. By the time I stepped back inside, she was already in bed, scrolling mindlessly through some feel-good article about decluttering your emotional energy. I watched her that night. Not just her movements, her face. How it didn't twitch when I lay beside her. How her breath stayed even when I shifted closer. How nothing about her felt vulnerable anymore. She used to lean into me when she was asleep. Used to grip my wrist without realizing, like I was the thing anchoring her to safety. Now she just floated there, inches away, unmoored and unreachable. I didn't ask about the phone call. I didn't need to. I knew what I heard. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. It was just enough to change the way I watched her. I noticed the way she'd check the mirror twice before leaving the house, but barely looked at me when she got home. I noticed how she'd ask the kids about their day with exaggerated enthusiasm, but never asked me about mine. I noticed how she'd scroll through her phone during dinner, claiming she was checking the weather, while her eyes stayed locked on the same message thread she refused to name. And through it all, I said nothing. Because this wasn't the kind of betrayal you confront head-on. Not yet. This was something you observe. Something you let grow until it thinks it's safe, until it stops hiding, until it shows its true face. She thought she was subtle. She thought she was clever. But she was just predictable. And I was no longer playing the role of husband. I was playing something else now. I was watching. And I wouldn't blink. It was my daughter's history assignment that made it final. Of all things. Just a 6th grade family tree project, due Monday. She asked me to help her print photos for the presentation board, pictures of birthdays, vacations, holidays. I dug into the shared cloud drive we all used, the one that silently absorbed every photo ever taken from any of our phones unless manually stopped. My wife had never stopped hers. She just assumed I wouldn't care enough to check. And she was almost right. I wasn't looking for anything. I just needed some pictures of the 4 of us smiling. I scrolled past beach shots, Halloween costumes, cake-covered faces, and then the image appeared. A candid, pearly lit, but unmistakable. My son's 8th birthday party 2 months ago. The cake, the balloons, the backyard with its half-inflated bounce house. I remembered it because she said she had a conference call and left early, only to return after the candles had already burned down to wax. I had taken a picture of the cake alone to send to her, out of guilt. But this photo wasn't mine. This was taken from a different angle entirely. From a distance. Through the slats of the back fence. And in the foreground, in the reflection of a garden globe that sat on the patio table, a warped but unmistakable image of her. With him. The same man who showed up in 3 different pictures on her shared folder labeled blue, the one with my sock in the frame. I hadn't noticed the man clearly before, not enough to match his face. But there, reflected in the curve of mirrored glass, was the clearest version yet. They were close. Too close. Smiling. Watching us. Watching her children celebrate a birthday she had abandoned for him, and she had brought him close enough to spy on it. Like it was entertainment. Like it was a show they were too proud of missing completely, so they watched from the wings instead. That was it. That was the moment. Not because I was surprised, but because everything clicked into place with mechanical precision. This wasn't just infidelity. It was detachment. She hadn't just cheated on me, she had turned her back on her children. On their lives. And worse, she didn't even care enough to hide it well. She was lazy with it. Careless. Her self-importance had made her reckless. It wasn't just betrayal, it was arrogance. More than the lies was what pulled the final switch in me. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel loss. I felt cold. Focused. Every beat of confusion, of fear, of hesitation, it stopped. There was no more trying to believe. No more pretending she was fixable. That was the moment I began constructing the end. I didn't confront her. I didn't breathe a word. I printed out every photo my daughter requested, smiled while helping her glue them onto her board, asked her which one she liked most, and I made a copy of the garden globe image, saved it separately, quietly, stored it in 3 different places, 2 digital, 1 physical. Redundancy. Not because I needed proof for her, but because soon enough, the children would. And it had to come from them, not me. It had to unfold naturally. They needed to discover it, not be told. Because what destroys a child more than being lied to by a parent is realizing they were manipulated to believe that lie by another. I would never be that parent. I would not be the mouth that speaks her sins. I would just leave the trail. Place the pieces. Let the truth walk itself to them. She had made the mistake of dragging her secret into their world. Now I would let that decision destroy her from the inside out. Slowly. Silently. I was done loving her. That had died a long time ago. But now I was done protecting her. And that was different. That was war. It started in the kitchen. Always the kitchen, where normalcy pretends to live. She was humming some soulless, upbeat tune from her morning playlist, slicing fruit like she hadn't been shadowing our family with a stranger. I set my coffee down, slow, deliberate. I need to ask you something, I said, and she looked up too quickly. Eyes wide, a little too bright. That's when I saw it, the mask tightening. Sure, she said, voice chipper. What's up? I held up a printed photo, just one. The reflection in the garden globe. Her. Him. Watching us. My son's birthday. You left early for a conference call, remember? She didn't blink. Didn't flinch. She started, stepping forward. That's not what it looks like. I didn't speak. Just placed the photo on the counter between us like a weapon that didn't need swinging. She paused, then tried to smile. Okay. Look. I didn't want to ruin his birthday. I needed air. I didn't even go in. I stayed outside. I wasn't doing anything wrong. No. I asked quietly. You brought your affair partner to our son's birthday party. You watched from the fence like it was a play. Like we were actors in your old life. Her mouth opened, halfway to a denial, then shut. It's not like that, she said finally. You just drove me. I wasn't planning to stay. It just happened. She was folding in on herself, reaching for a script that wasn't working anymore. I didn't want to be the bad guy. I'm going through a lot, and you haven't exactly been present lately either. That was the pivot. The guilt throw. The desperate lunge at blame. I nodded slowly. So, this is my fault? I missed your emotional TED Talk while raising our kids, handling the house, paying the bills, while you explored growth in hotel beds. Her face hardened, then cracked, just a little. You don't get to stand there and act perfect. You've been cold for years. I felt alone in this marriage long before anything happened. I stepped in closer. No yelling, just volume made of ice. You want to talk about cold? You looked your children in the eye that day and told them work was more important than their birthday. But the truth is, it wasn't work. It was him. And you smiled when you said it. You hugged them with that same lie stitched into your arms. That's not distance. That's rot. Her lips trembled, then pulled into a smirk, weak, but defiant. At least I was honest with myself. You've been lying about being happy for years. Maybe this was mercy. That was the mistake. That line. I took a breath. Let it settle. then said, "Don't you dare dress your betrayal in empathy. Mercy is a mother showing up. Mercy is a wife saying she's unhappy before she cheats. You? You chose convenience. You didn't leave. You lingered. You fed off this life like a parasite while building a new one behind a screen. And you brought him into our backyard like a dog sniffing at what you used to own." The smirk vanished. Her hands were shaking now. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," she whispered. "I was lost. I didn't think I'd hurt them." And there it was, the unraveling. Not rage. Not sorrow. Panic. The crumbling of a woman who believed her ability to control the narrative was permanent. I leaned in just enough for her to feel the shift. "They're going to find out," I said. "Not because I'll tell them, but because you already did. You left the iPad synced. You left photos, shared folders, messages. You didn't even bother to clean the mess you made. You just assumed I wouldn't look. And now it's too late. Your daughter is smarter than you think. Your son is more observant than you realize. The only reason they don't hate you yet is because they don't know everything. Yet." She broke then. Her legs found the stool behind her. She sat, hands covering her face, shoulders curling inward. "Please," she said, muffled, "don't turn them against me." I stared at her. "I don't have to," I said, soft but final. "You did that all by yourself. They trusted you. They loved you without condition. And you traded that for attention from a man who wouldn't even come inside." Silence stretched. She lifted her head, mascara already running. "Do you still love me?" It was a ghost asking the question. A shadow of the woman I married. I looked at her like a man viewing a ruin, once majestic, now decayed beyond repair. "I loved the version of you that protected our children. That version doesn't exist anymore." She didn't respond. Just sat there, cracked wide open. No mask. No lies left. And I didn't leave. I didn't storm out. I stood. Watched. Let the weight of what she had done settle on her like ash. And that was the final blow. She followed me to the hallway, barefoot, breath catching like she'd just remembered how lungs worked. The kids were upstairs. Doors closed. But the weight of what had happened in that kitchen still hung heavy in the air, like smoke from a fire that hadn't quite burned out. "You're overreacting," she said first, her voice trembling, but still hunting for control. "You're blowing this out of proportion." It was a mistake, not a pattern. I didn't stop walking. I didn't even look at her. "Mistakes don't last for months," I said, calmly. "Mistakes don't involve hotel reservations, burner accounts, or hiding behind your own children to protect a lie." She reached for my arm, and I let her hand touch fabric, but not skin. "She didn't deserve that." "You're not so perfect either," she snapped, trying to claw her way back into a position where she wasn't beneath me. "You've been absent for years. Always working. Always tired. You didn't notice me disappearing because you weren't even looking." I turned then, slow, deliberate. "I didn't notice you disappearing because I trusted you to still be here." That shut her up for a breath. But the silence only made her desperate. "I loved you," she said next, and her voice cracked on the past tense like it betrayed her. "I did. I gave you years. Children. A home. You're really going to throw it all away because I made a few bad choices." Her words were unraveling now. She couldn't even say cheated. Couldn't name it. Like the syllables would make it more real. "You'll never find someone who loves you like I did," she added, softer, clinging to the only rope left. I nodded slowly. "I hope not," I said. "I hope I never find someone who smiles at our kids and lies through her teeth, who sneaks around and lectures me about emotional growth, who poisons a family from within and calls it personal evolution." She stared at me like she'd never seen me before. And maybe she hadn't. Maybe the man she cheated on, the one she assumed would break or beg or drown in her apologies, that man was dead now. I had watched him die in silence. I was someone else now. Someone who didn't need her to understand, or regret, or explain. Someone who didn't need her at all. "You think I don't feel horrible," she said suddenly, trying to pivot again, voice softening like maybe remorse would land better than arrogance. "I hate what I've done. I hate myself for it. Doesn't that matter to you at all?" I studied her face. The way guilt contorted it like a mask melting under heat. "You only hate it now because it's exposed," I said. "You had no problem living in it." Until I turned on the lights. She stepped back like she'd been struck, not by volume, but by truth. And that was all I had left for her now. No affection. No anger. Just the truth, cut into pieces sharp enough to open wounds. "You're just trying to punish me," she whispered, eyes darting like she was suddenly aware the house had ears. "You want them to hate me. You want to ruin everything." I shook my head once. I'm not trying to do anything. That's the difference between us. You act. You lie. You orchestrate. Me? I just waited. And you handed me everything I needed. Her knees nearly buckled at that. She turned toward the staircase like maybe she could flee upward, back into the illusion of a home that no longer existed. You're scaring me, she said quietly. You're so cold. I met her eyes then, and there was no heat left in mine. I stopped being your husband the second you decided to be someone else's. Her lip trembled, and for the first time, I saw the fear she had always tried to hide beneath sarcasm and smirks. She wasn't in control anymore. The house didn't orbit her decisions. The story wasn't hers to twist. I walked past her, slow and steady, while she stood there, unsteady, in the ruins she built with her own hands. She wanted to scream. She wanted to explain. She wanted to claw her way back to whatever position she thought she still held. But there was nothing left for her to grip. No lie to hide behind. No more borrowed time. And I said nothing more. That silence? It wasn't weakness. It was the echo of everything I once felt for her being buried, inch by inch. And she heard it. She heard it louder than any word I could have spoken. She showed up at the school drop-off 2 months after the final conversation, standing by the far edge of the parking lot like a stray thought no one invited. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes sunken behind oversized sunglasses that couldn't hide how far she'd fallen. She used to walk through that same lot like it was a runway, smiling at other parents, casually reminding everyone of her curated, impossible life. Now, no one waved. No one spoke. Even the ones who once adored her had quietly unfollowed, unsubscribed, detached. Her lover? Long gone. Left after one too many ignored messages, after one too many we need to slow down speeches once the truth came crashing into the daylight. Her job let her go a week later, something about reputation, client discomfort, inappropriate personal use of office resources. Her parents stopped returning calls. Her own sister told her, flatly, that she'd made her bed. I heard about it in fragments, little echoes from mutuals too polite to gossip, but not enough to stay neutral. She tried to reach out a few times, at first, angry. You're making me out to be a monster, she texted. You're poisoning our kids against me. I didn't reply. Then came the shift. Regret turned her acidic pride into trembling pleas. I still love you, she wrote. You were always my person. We were soulmates. Please, just talk to me. I read every message once. Never twice. I didn't block her. I didn't report her. I just never answered. Because she wasn't talking to me, she was talking to a memory, and I'm not that man anymore. The man who forgave small lies. The man who let benefit of the doubt cover for weeks of betrayal. The man who carried this family while she played make-believe with some disposable fantasy. That man is gone. She sent a letter once, handwritten, thick with perfume like it could resurrect something dead. She said she missed the kids, missed the quiet mornings, missed the man who once looked at her like she was the center of the universe. She wrote, I don't know who I am without you. And that, I realized, was the most honest thing she ever said. Because that's the truth she spent so long burying under yoga sessions, half-truths, filtered selfies, and stolen hours. Her identity had always been borrowed, propped up by admiration, built on the backs of those who loved her more than she could ever love them. And now? She's no one. Not because I took anything from her, but because she never built anything real to begin with. And when the spotlight dimmed, when the audience left, all that was left was a woman who couldn't stand in her own silence. She sees me now the way people look at locked doors and rainstorms, just a memory of warmth they no longer deserve. She came to the house once, stood outside and rang the bell, tears already streaming before I even opened the door. I don't expect you to take me back, she whispered. I need to be near someone who remembers who I used to be. And that's what broke whatever sympathy might have still been hiding in me. Not anger, not betrayal. Just the desperation of someone who had built her self-worth entirely on how others saw her. She never missed me. She missed being seen. I looked at her then, really looked. And I didn't see my wife. I didn't see the mother of my children. I didn't even see the woman who destroyed us. I saw a stranger wearing a mask she couldn't hold up anymore. And that's when I closed the door. Not with force. Not with vengeance. Just quiet finality. Because I wasn't shutting her out. I was sealing a chapter that should have ended long before she ever brought another man to watch our family from behind a fence. These days, the kids don't ask about her much. Not because I told them not to, but because children, as it turns out, are excellent judges of character when you give them the space to see clearly. They know who showed up, who stayed, who lied. She taught them that herself. So no, I don't hate her. Hate takes energy, and she's not worth the expenditure. She's just a name on an old contact list. A ghost who used to sleep beside me. A cautionary tale with good teeth and bad timing. And if you're watching this, if you've made it this far, thanks for listening. Let me know where you're watching from and what you would have done if it were your wife.